Good evening and welcome to the regular meeting of the Revere School Committee. Please rise and salute the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call of the members.
Mrs. Bronston Rizzo. Here. Mr. D'Ambrosio.
Here.
Mr. Franti.
Here.
Ms. Bradalisi.
Here.
Mr. Sinella.
Present.
Ms. Ty.
Here.
Mayor Arrigo.
Here. We will begin this evening's meeting with public speak. Dr. Kelly, if there are any members of the public which would like to speak.
There are. I'm going to promote John Kingston.
Good evening, can you hear me?
Hi, John. Yeah, we can hear you. Do you want
Hi.
to put your camera on, or?
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be working, I apologize. Basically, what I wanted to talk to you about was, in this visioning meetings, we've talked about different programs that we'd like to add to the new high school, and I appreciate that. My concern is that the high school is years away, and I would like to see at least some things maybe get started, even as a pilot or a very small program, but at least to give the children and the students that are either in the high school now or coming in the next couple of years some opportunities that currently don't exist. I think if anyone, we've gone out to a restaurant, their restaurants are hurting for help. I think a small culinary arts program might help a lot of students and also help local restaurants. I realize we have to compete with the Vogue for spots and all that kind of stuff. I wasn't thinking so much on that grand of a scale. Even if we use the current internship program, where a student leaves the high school for an 80-minute block at the high school and attends a business or goes to a school, with the variety of things that the internship program creates. I've had some interns here at the credit union as well. And I just think maybe they could go down to the retro and work with the folks there and get some knowledge. Possibly we could hire a local restaurant person maybe to work with them. This way you're avoiding licensure and all that kind of things in the sense of, it's not really a class, but it's more of an internship. And it's just a window to a restaurant type setting for a student. I think it would be a big help to some of the kids. I think for the kids, some of the kids might have interest in it. I did do a Facebook post on this just to gauge some interest, and I had some educators in other districts that said they offered like a cooking type class, not so much culinary arts, but a cooking type class, and they had a lot of positive feedback, and the kids really enjoyed it. So I realize, money's tight sometimes, but I think this might be a good opportunity for a student to spend an hour of their day in an internship program, even working possibly in the retro, helping to prepare meals for our staff. At the high school. So it's something that I'd like to see happen. I'm not going into a full culinary arts program like we would have at a new high school where we would, have to apply for that and get some waivers and things like that. I'm not thinking anything on that grand a scale at this point. Just a pilot program, just to get some kids involved in doing some other things and hopefully develop some interest that way. I was hoping to get a positive response on that. That's basically what I wanted to discuss. Thank you. I appreciate the time and I appreciate you folks letting me speak.
Thank you, Mr. Kingston. Any other members of the public?
Nobody else with their hand up.
We'll move on to the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're going to start tonight with a presentation from our curriculum team. And joining us now are Dr. Christina Porter, Dr. Matthew Costa, and Ms. Brianna Supas, who oversee curriculum, the core curriculum for the district. And, Ralph DeChico is telling me that he had his hand up and I didn't see it. I see it now. So sorry, curriculum directors, we're going to have you pause for one more minute. I'm going to promote Mr. DeChico so he can speak. Sorry.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly, no problem at all. I just wanted to make a comment. I know Desi had come out with a report this week for the schooling that people that are just in COCOG that are asymptomatic are going to be able to stay in school or whatnot. But I just wanted to see, Desi did not come out with any identification or scenarios if students are quarantined that are sick or whatnot, or family members are sick. So I just wanted to see if there is going to be any type of exceptions for remote learning for that case, so that they do not lose schooling if they are indeed sick themselves or need to be quarantined at home for a family member. That was just the comment that I just wanted to make.
Thank you, Mr. DeChico.
Thank you.
Okay. So with that, Dr. Costa, Dr. Porter, and Ms. Supis, I am going to give you the floor. I can share my screen and show your presentation. Is that helpful? Okay. You all need to unmute.
Yes, thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Okay, are we good, Dr. Kelly?
I think you're great. Yes.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you, Dr. Kelly, Mayor Arrigo, and members of the school committee for inviting us to come and share some curriculum updates with you this evening. My name is Christina Porter, and I'm the Director of Humanities.
And my name is Matt Costa. I'm the STEM Director for the district.
And my name is Brianna Supis. I'm the Assistant Director of Curriculum and Instruction and also the Director of Title I. So today's agenda and objectives for our presentation. The agenda is for participants to be able to describe curriculum updates in both humanities and STEM, to be able to identify and describe next steps in relationship to curriculum instruction, and also to be able to describe the equity audit process that we took part in for both curriculum and instruction this year. Our agenda, we are through our introductions, and next on the agenda is our ELA curriculum updates. So some updates for you on ELA is this year we formed a literacy curriculum review team for K through 3. The team was comprised of educators, our literacy coaches, and administration, and all of the elementary buildings. We were able to review 3 programs. One of the programs is the one that we used for quite a while now, and then there was another one from HMH and a program from the classroom collaborative for being a reader and making meeting. Part of the review, we discussed what literacy and equity in education look for, and we hyperlinked that for you. We also hyperlinked the priority look fors that we used when looking at the 3 of these curriculum resources.
Sorry about that. I tried to go to the link, and I think it might need
permission.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll fix that for everybody if that's the case. And then the so we took these look fors and we spent some time with each program and really went through all the different components of the program to vet what we needed or what we felt we needed for our Revere students. Also, some updates was Paul Revere piloted the Being a Writer program, and also the SIPS program, and SIPS stands for Systematic Instruction and Phonemic Awareness, Phonics and Sight Words. And with great success, the Being a Writer program was widely recommended, and also within the district-wide PLGs that we were able to have as a result of being remote. A lot of the teachers from other buildings started to learn about both Being a Writer and SIPS, and it really happened like as a grassroots type of thing where the teachers really started to want to learn more about Being a Writer and SIPS. So The program that we ended up moving towards was Classroom for the Center for the Classroom Collaborative, and they have those components, both being a writer and SIPs, but they also have being a reader for K through 2 and making meaning for grade 3. And that was ultimately the program that the literacy review team decided to move forward with adopting this school year. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. We, oh, hold on one minute, Dr. Kelly, I'm sorry. We also received an early literacy assessment grant this year from the DESE, and with that it was approximately $34,000, and with that funding we were able to train educators and purchase new materials for the Dibbles 8th edition, and teachers will be administrating that early assessment this fall coming up, and also in the winter and the spring.
Thank you, Brianna. We were very pleased to be one of 10 districts in the state to receive the GLEAM grant from DESE, the multi-year grant. GLEAM stands for Growing Literacy Equity Across Massachusetts. So we focused our application on the middle school level, and the grant is going to focus on evaluating our ELA instruction in light of equity around the 3-tiered systems. Also this summer, connected to that, we had a team of middle school educators work to define our core practices, our tier 1 practices through the lens of equity. So all of them were in the process of culling out these anchor units. I had a team of coaches and teachers, and I just put a sample of the unit. Dr. Kelly, you might have to be signed into Drive. No, that would have worked. That's good. We'll check all of our links. Good. So this is just a sample of a unit. This came out of the district PLG work, just that call to make sure that we have a similar focus in our instruction across all 3 schools, and the teachers did wonderful work. I was able to meet with them this week. So now we can move on to the ELA next steps.
Okay, so like I mentioned before, the review team did select the Center for the Classroom Collaborative and implemented this school year will be being a reader in K through 2, making meaning in grade 3, being a writer K through 5, and then the SIPs as our tier 2 intervention. So one of the main reasons why this program was chose was the dual focus on both academic learning and social skills development. The review team really felt that social skills development component of the program really made it comprehensive in what we were looking for our students. It includes being culturally responsive instruction and equitable teaching practices, creating a respectful and safe learning community, facilitating cooperative learning, building authentic communication, drawing on students' experiences and knowledge, and scaffolding instruction.
As far as the GLEAM work for the middle school, the first part of that work involves working with the consultants that we were paired with through DESE, Kip Pollerson. So we're going to work on an audit, and the audit goes over the entire school year. We just finished our contract with them. So they're going to look at our curriculum and instruction in light of equity and making sure that students have access and they're not meeting our benchmarks, and that we're able to offer intervention that's appropriate in the classroom, and then if they needed that tier 3 intervention for students who are several grade levels behind. For the middle school work that was just completed over the summer, we're going to share that with educators tomorrow. So the teams were wonderful. They made a bunch of videos sort of walking their colleagues through what they had put together, and then we're going to continue that work by the coaches in PLG is starting in the fall.
So our math elementary review team followed a similar process. So we formed our review team in early 2020. Our team was comprised of representatives from all 6 elementary schools, including classroom teachers, math coaches, and administrators. The first thing our review team did was we reviewed ideas of effective and equitable math instruction. So I'm really just trying to come up with a shared vision for what effective and equitable math instruction means, and really that emphasis on problem solving, supporting students in developing a deep conceptual understanding of mathematics, engaging students in meaningful mathematical discourse. And when we look at this NCTM document on equitable-based math teaching practices. It talks about promoting deeper learning for all students, leveraging multiple mathematical competencies. When we think about traditional math classrooms, sometimes traditional math classrooms might really be spaces where some students feel marginalized because they might not be as quick at thinking about math, or they might not have as easy of a time memorizing certain rules and algorithms. But really having a math classroom where all students feel empowered and feel that they bring a lot to the classroom, and that their experiences and their backgrounds aren't being marginalized. So after we reviewed and came up with our common understanding for what effective and equitable math instruction means, we established our priorities and look for documents. Obviously, we wanted to keep in mind that there is no such thing as a perfect textbook for every classroom and every student, and we wanted to identify what were key priority areas for us, leveraging our strengths and hoping to find a resource that can push us and help us continue to grow in places where we want to grow. So the team came up with priorities and what it might look like in different resources. So having a clear and consistent connection between the conceptual understanding work that students are doing and the procedural fluency work that students are trying to develop mastery of, and having a variety of assessment options, assessments ranging from diagnostic to deeper learning assessments. As we push more and more towards deeper learning in the district, all of our teachers really were looking for some good resources to help them think about performance-based assessments or project-based learning opportunities. So the review team reviewed 5 different elementary math programs, and all of these programs have earned the highest ratings from Ed Reports. Ed Reports is a private, nonprofit, not-for-profit group that reviews different curriculum materials and rates them. So we reviewed Bridges Math, Ready Math, Eureka Math, Envisions 2020, and Illustrative Mathematics. Envisions was the materials that we had been using previously, and as I mentioned, all of those had earned the highest rating. So we were looking at all really good resources, and the review team had a really just a wealth of resources to analyze and inform and choose from. So the review team selected Illustrative Mathematics, and this year we will be implementing it in grades 4 and 5, and our teachers have actually started to receive some professional development on it starting this morning. And then next year we will transition into K-3. And the reason why we are implementing in this way is we wanted to recognize that our students and teachers in grades K-3 will be implementing new materials, and we didn't want to overwhelm anyone with implementing 2 resources at the same time. Some of the things that the review team really appreciated with Illustrative Math was the student-centered focus with materials. Illustrative Math really has intentional instructional routines for mathematics to promote student discourse, to leverage multiple representations and multiple solutions of mathematics. There's an inquiry-based focus of lessons, and there's many differentiated support. So really recognizing that students learn in different rates and in different ways, and having materials to support students with their ongoing learning of mathematics. The additional supports that we really liked about Illustrative Math was the intentional focus on creating a math community where students are talking about math, students are working on mathematics in groups and using different routines to discuss math and share their solutions. There's an intentional universal design for learning design to the program, so really trying to remove barriers from the beginning for different units and activities for students. There's a wide variety of assessments ranging, as I mentioned before, from diagnostics to deeper learning assessments. There's language routines to support our English learners and all learners in developing the language of mathematics. And there's also protocols for unpacking lessons that educators can engage in during professional learning groups.
Okay, so I'm next, some social studies curriculum updates. I want to thank the school committee for approving our newly appointed history and social studies coach, Ms. Petty. In her job description, we wrote in that she is working with grades 6 through 12 teachers, and one of her specific areas of focus is on working with those teams of teachers, as she already had this year, on creating a more equitable curriculum, making sure that students are able to see themselves in their multiple histories in our study of history and social studies. She's also going to be specifically supporting the coordination and implementation of the Action Civics projects in grades 8 and 10. Our 5DP, this was going to happen, but then COVID derailed it. That's a typo, I apologize. They are going to meet with our grades K through 5 teacher leaders to re-examine our shared curriculum documents. So we're going to come up with a date for the fall of 2021. Again, that was on the table, but it got pushed back because of COVID. Our grade 6 and 7 teachers at the Rumney were actually selected to participate in DESI's model curriculum pilot for social studies. We're really excited about some of the resources that they created. Our teachers are going to receive professional development. It's beginning this week. This pilot goes through, the flyer that's linked here kind of goes through what those materials will look like. So these are some really neat model frameworks. So they're going to pilot them, give feedback, and then those will be available to their colleagues and to all school districts in Massachusetts. So we were really, really happy to be included in that pilot. We're very excited about that. Great. We also received the Action Civics grant from DESI for a little bit more than $34,000. So that grant is going to, again, support our teachers in grades 8 and 10 with implementing civics curriculum. It covers trainings for the wonderful local organization called Primary Source. And it also covers field trip costs for kids in grades 8 and 10. So unfortunately, the Senate Immersion Module Program, which is a wonderful program, is on hold for the fall. But we're hopeful that that is back online in the spring of 2022, so we're able to have our students in those grades participate in that wonderful opportunity.
So like Dr. Porter said, our work did get derailed, so some of our next steps is continuing that work. So we're going to schedule the 5DP dates for reviewing the elementary social studies standards, and we're really excited to get back to work on that. In grades 6 and 7, the social studies teachers from RMA will attend the pilot kickoff on professional development, for professional development on August 19th and the 20th. And then they'll also have a virtual PD scheduled throughout the year. They'll also design the PLG schedule with the history coach, Ms. Tina Petty, to work on equity in the curriculum and supporting the Action Civics projects for this upcoming school year.
Okay, so we also wanted to share, because this is obviously hugely important equity work. So this is a more broad slide. So I feel like Dr. Kelly, that you had shared this. This was some initial professional development that Matt and I had done with administrators. We just linked the session that we had done with Seacoast. So it was initial training on identifying bias in the curriculum. So we had started that in COVID year. We delivered it to our teacher leaders. We were able to visit some schools, and then principals also delivered that. So that had begun then. So we just wanted to share that that was what we had started then. During this past school year, during our COVID year, we were able to collaborate with the equity team, which was really wonderful to review materials and implementation through an equity lens. I think that you had all had a presentation from the work of Dr. Garcia and his team in May. We had looked at some other rubrics for evaluating curriculum through a broader lens of equity. We had looked at a rubric from Cincinnati Public Schools, and also that came out of NYU. So we're going to continue that work into this year. With the equity team and Dr. Garcia, we also had proposed some processes for students to be able to report curriculum that they felt contained bias or that was culturally insensitive. So that was a really wonderful experience working with Dr. Garcia's team this year, and we will continue that equity work, and our deliverables will be to nail down that process that we're going to use to evaluate all of our curriculum, but also have a way for students to report issues that they have, so it can come to our attention. And there was one more part, Dr. Kelly, on that slide for Dr. Costa.
Oh, sorry about that.
No
It's okay.
worries. So one of the things that we have been focusing on the last couple of years is continuously trying to support our coaches and teacher leaders and developing a shared understanding of what equitable instruction looks like. And when we regularly meet with the coaches and consulting teachers, reading different resources, developing that understanding of and that shared vision of what equitable instruction looks like in different content areas. So those are just some links to some different resources that the coaches and teacher leaders have looked at to continue to strengthen their understanding and their ability to support the educators that they're working with. Now we can go to if there are any questions for us.
Do any members have any questions or comments? Mrs. Rizzo.
Thank you all for your presentation. It was very effective and precise. You all do amazing work. Just a question on Gleam. Do we use any other literacy consultants? And if so, would we be able to utilize the consultant that we have now since we've been funded for Gleam?
Stacey, I lost you for a second. I just want to make sure I heard your question. I feel like you asked, so we have Kit Tollerson, and then you asked if we're able to use another consultant like related to the Gleam grant?
Yes, please.
Oh, sure. So every school district was assigned a consultant to work with. So we have Kit to do that work with this year. But I wonder if you're thinking about the work that had already been done at SBA. They had worked with a different consultant.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
Yeah.
that was in the back of my mind.
Right, so I can see that work, for like SBA is much further along because they've already done some of this work. So I can definitely see a place where those folks would connect when we're all working together.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Rizzo. Any other members? Ms. Ty.
Thank you. Christina, looking at it from a practical point of view, the question about, that you propose some processes for students to report curriculum that contains bias or is culturally insensitive, I think that's really wonderful because sometimes with the kind of background that many of the teachers have, it is not the same background that so many of the students have. So once they report this, can you foresee, what will happen? So will that mean that if somebody says, that one of Mark Twain's books contains contains paragraphs or is maybe even the entire book is insensitive and contains bias. Huckleberry Finn says he'd go to hell to save his friend. Is there something there that you would do? Is there a process that, would you continue to teach that book? Would you change that book? Would you identify what's wrong with that book and what's right with that book and move from there? And I can blab on for a while, but I think I'll give you a chance to say how you would do this.
Oh, I really appreciate your question, Ms. Ty. I think that the intention behind that part of the process that we had discussed in working with Dr. Garcia's team is right now when students experience something like that, there is no way for them to report it. It just sort of comes to us haphazardly, right? So every now and then I'll get a student who feels comfortable enough to come down and talk to me or talk to their teacher. So we were just looking for some kind of system, and we had brainstormed, like, should it be an anonymous system, just a way for kids to report that so it gets on our radar. And then I think some things are, like you mentioned, a lot of the classics, right, that we're used to teaching. I've been thinking a lot myself about even things like To Kill a Mockingbird that we still teach, it's been around forever. But there's definitely better ways to approach those topics than by, for example, just use that as an example, only using a book written by a white female author to discuss race. So it would just, the intention there is just to have a safe way for kids to put that on our radar. And then the committee would come up with a process. So what are we going to do once we have a report? Is it a paragraph? Is it the whole book? And we hadn't come up with a system yet, but we just want a way where kids don't have to be sitting there in class feeling like, this really bothers me, but I have no way to safely kind of put this on someone's radar so they can examine it. So we look forward to doing that work this year with Dr. Garcia's team.
Well, can I follow up on that, please, Mr. So, Dr. Porter, will you then have, I mean, a set group of books, or will teachers then be free to choose some? I mean, obviously, we have to work within the budget with the ones we have. How will you approach that, about what literature, for example, will be contained within the curriculum?
So I did notice, I was looking through, I know that we're going to do this week, some of the findings of the audit that was done, and I noticed that one of the pieces was, it kind of lines up with this process we were talking about. We need to do a broad examination, and I'll use ELA as an example, of all the titles that we teach, just under the idea of whose voices are we teaching and who is not being represented. That's like a broad look, right? And I can say that I feel like there's places where we're very strong and there's places where we can certainly improve. So that's a much larger process. And the one that we included on this slide was just the idea of kids having a safe way to report any kind of discomfort that they feel. So I just think that this is definitely the time, and I think, you know, just being a humanities person, to take a good hard look at what we're offering to kids in our classrooms and making sure that it's representative of the types of students that we serve. And I think we have room for improvement, just like a lot of places do.
One follow-up, and then I'll stop. So, and from the history point of view, will you then be taking a look eventually at various textbooks that we're reading now and consider whether we'll continue with those or move to something else?
Yes, Ms. Dyke. So we've moved away, in most places for history, we've moved away from the text, just because if you think about it, right, it's really, history changes all the time right in front of us. So using the textbook kind of traps us. And now we're in a world where we have access to a lot more resources. But one of the roles of our new history coach is just that, to evaluate our curriculum under the lens of, you know, whose stories are being told here, whose histories are we looking at, and again, just really, like, that's my driving force in my head, making sure our students can see and hear about themselves and what they're hearing in classroom. It shouldn't be random that you're hearing about something that you can relate to, you know, that applies to you. And we know traditionally history hasn't been taught that way in school. So history will also be a part of that same process.
Thank you so much for the answer. You were, and for all of you for doing it. Christina, you were a star when you were in the 10th grade, and you still are. So,
thank you, Ms. Ty.
Thank you, Ms. Ty. Any other members, questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll continue on. Thank you all for your tremendous work.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your evening.
All right, thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
For the next piece of the superintendent's report, Mr. Svensson is coming up to give us an update on what is happening with the Lincoln School air conditioning project.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Carl.
Hi, everybody hear me okay? Yep. Excellent. Okay, just a quick update on the progress. Just to start back and refresh, last year we upgraded the electrical system to be able to handle a chilled water chiller system throughout the building. That was completed Also, in an attempt to lower the usage of electricity in the building, we upgraded all the lighting to an LED lighting system. And that's gonna, bring down the electrical usage to allow some more capacity for this system to be installed. Over this summer, we installed the chilled water loop, which is a basketball-sized diameter pipe throughout the entire building. We needed to dismantle all the ceilings throughout the building to allow for this loop to basically circumvent the entire building to be able to spider off into every classroom or area that's receiving air conditioning. So an enormous amount of work was completed over the summer. Unfortunately, we will not have air conditioning for the first day of school because we're still waiting for components on this system that need to tie into this piping. They're expecting to come the first week in September. And then it's just a matter of hooking it up, filling the system, testing it, and running it. So we're close. Unfortunately, like I said, I would love to be reporting that it's completed, but that was never the schedule. This thing, even though it is delayed, was still probably supposed to be arriving next week, and now I'm hearing it's a week later. But there's still a ton of work to be done. I'm sorry, not a ton of work to be done. A ton of work was completed. There's still just this final piece of the puzzle that's gonna bring it home. So we're close. I'm happy to answer any questions or anything else I can help you with.
Mr. Franti.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kyle, how you doing?
Okay.
Kyle, with the thing obviously not being finished, are we going to be able to get the kids in there for the first day of school, with everything, waxed and cleaned and everything?
Yeah, so anything involving any of the classrooms, and that was our goal for this summer, and that was basically what we aimed at, is completed. So teachers' rooms have already been cleaned, floors have been waxed, and furniture is back in place. So most of our work now is either on the outside of the building or in the mechanical rooms. There's little work left in the library that's got to be completed, but we expect that to be completed by the first day of school. But as far as all teacher spaces and kitchen, cafeteria, things like that, we're completely out of everybody's way and ready for the first day of school.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other members? Mr. Sinella.
Hey, Kyle, how are you?
I'm fine.
Kyle, any plans for replacing the windows? I know that's been discussed over the years.
Yes, Fred, we're actually, we're involved in the MSBA process right now. We've been accepted. We're actually entering the design phase for new windows and doors for that building through the MSBA. We're in the early stage of the process, but we're well along the way of getting that. And then the final piece of that puzzle, and hopefully will be the roof. We found out that a roof has to be 30 years old. The current roof is 28 years old. So the way this thing is lining up, hopefully if we get this window and door project completed, the next project for that school will be a new roof. And then you're looking at a building that's got brand new doors, windows, heating systems, boilers, full air conditioning system, and a brand new roof. That building's going to be in really good shape for a long time to come.
All right, Kyle, thank you for the update.
Well,
Thank you, Mr. Sinella. Any other members? Okay, seeing none, we'll continue on.
Thanks, Kyle. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
thank you.
The next item on the superintendent's report has to do with transportation and buses. And we were able to talk briefly with the policy subcommittee meeting about what we anticipate could be a problem ahead for us regarding transportation. And really it has to do with the change in schedule because we no longer have ELT schools. All of our elementary schools are getting out at the same time. All of our middle schools are getting out at the same time, as is our high school and Seacoast School. So we've been notified by Healy, who of course is our transportation partner, that they're having a really hard time hiring. And it's something that's not unusual in a segment where I think there's a lot of this is happening in transportation and in other fields where we just can't find folks to work for these jobs that I guess, you know, maybe we could say are underpaid to begin with, so they're not very attractive. But so at any rate, we've been studying a little bit about what exactly our bus demands would be for this school year and where we might land with that. And the first thing I want to share, and I want to thank Seth Novoselsky, who's our transportation director, who put this presentation together, if I can even find it here. Here we go, sorry. And it's a very brief presentation, but it just shows that, if we can switch the presentation, Paul. Oh, I have to share, sorry, okay. All right, go here. All right, there we go. What we're looking at in light of this issue around needing more buses because everybody's getting out at the same time, whereas in the past, we could have one set of buses with one set of drivers that would have delivered students home from Revere High School, for example, that then could come to the Garfield Middle School and deliver those kids home because they weren't getting out until almost 4 o'clock. We no longer have that option. So what we did was survey everybody who lived more than a mile from their school and asked whether or not they would need transportation. And I'll get to the survey results in just a minute. But these slides are showing some of the different things that we're looking at. And the first one is if the committee decided that they want to bus every student who lives a mile or more from school, and every student and their family said, yes, we want to be on that bus, what we would need to do is hire 9 additional buses at a cost of just under $800,000. If we go to the state limit and say that we want to transport students who live 2 miles from their school, and this is just for middle and high school, I should say, we would be able to make that work with the 20 buses that we've already contracted from Haley. We wouldn't need any additional buses. And if we think about some intermediary steps, this one is if we bus all kids who live 1.5 miles or more from their school, we would need to find 2 additional buses in order to make that work, or fund 2 additional buses at a cost of $174,000, which is the same as if we said, you know what, we'll bus all of the kids who live 1 mile or more from their middle school, but for the older kids, for the high school kids, they would need to live 2 miles or more in order to get on the bus. That would give us the same solution at the same cost and the need of 2 more buses at $174,000. We bring up all of these options because we think that even if we decide that we can do something and afford to expand our bus services, we really need to think about what's viable. And these 2 options that you see on the screen here are a lot more viable than this one that says we'll bus everybody who lives more than a mile for want of 9 buses and 9 drivers. So we wanted to share that information with the committee. We don't have a proposal for you just yet because we're still crunching the data. The surveys came in, they were due today, from parents and family members, caregivers. And what we're looking at right now is responses from, let me just share this again. These are the responses that we have to date. So, did I not share? No, is it? Should I? Oh, okay, it is showing. All right. And I don't know if you can see this. We did email this to you earlier today, but basically we're not seeing a lot of demand at the high school level. There are not a large number of people saying that they want transportation to begin with. So that puts us in a little bit of a better position in terms of having enough buses to serve all of the middle schools and make sure that everybody gets transported. We see a much higher demand in grades 6 through 9, where we've got a couple hundred kids in the morning and a couple hundred kids in the afternoon at each of those grade levels that are going to be looking for transportation. And with the bigger kids, we can typically fit around 55 on any given bus. So you're welcome to review those numbers. We're going to continue to review the numbers. We need to look a little bit more deeply. There's going to be information for us, such as if more of these kids are from the Rumney Marsh and the Susan B. Anthony, then that can have an impact on how many buses we need. But Seth, along with Dr. Galucci, is going to be doing that work over the next few days. And we just wanted to make sure the committee was aware of it in case we have to come to you with a proposal to change the transportation policy.
Any members have any questions? Ms. Tai.
Well, I'm just concerned about the busing at the middle school, because that is such an integral part of the lottery system, and that we have promised transportation. That's whenever anyone says, well, how will I get my child there? It's always, well, we will provide the transportation. So I was glad to hear you talk about that.
It's definitely a priority, is that middle school transportation.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tai. Mr. Sinella.
Through the superintendent, the response, for example, on 6th grade was 258. What is the total enrollment in the 6th grade?
So the total enrollment is a little over 600, sorry, in 6th grade. Let me revise that, I was thinking of 9th grade.
543.
543 is the total enrollment, but I should say that this survey went to families of kids who lived more than a mile from their school. We didn't send it to the kids who lived in the immediate neighborhood.
Okay, that would account for that.
Okay.
Also, I know that there's been discussion of start time with the high school at a later time. Would that be something to look in as to 7th, 8th grade, or the high school with the later start time, which would free buses who would be doing, like you made reference, would be doing it in the morning, and then a later dismissal would allow for the opening up of buses?
That is a great idea and something that we absolutely should pursue, but it's something that requires collective bargaining with the unions, so not something that we
I
can...
disagree with that. I've looked through the teacher's contract. The time start and time stop is not covered under their contract unless I misread it. So maybe we should get a discussion on that first, whether it does require negotiations.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sinella. Any other members? Mr. Franti.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, Diane, when was these surveys sent out? Are they recent?
Yeah, I want to say it was a week ago. I think it was open for 1 week.
Is it officially closed now?
Yes, we asked that they respond by today.
Okay. Do we have...
Oh, by yesterday, actually,
Okay.
sorry.
Do we have the additional money if we have to hire the 9 buses or versus the 2? Do we have money for either one?
We especially have the money for the 2 buses. That I don't anticipate would be a problem at all. The money for, if we had to hire 9 more buses, would require that we move into our carry-forward reserves that we were hoping to preserve. We could also look at spending more of our ESSER 3 funding in order to close that gap. So there are definite ways that we could do it. It's just not optimal with the planning that we've done in terms of preserving funding over the next several years to ensure we have some stability in the district when the ESSER money goes away.
Well, I think our problem right now is that don't we have to let the kids know because they start school next Wednesday, you know, what transportation is going to be available, so when would a final decision be made on that?
Yeah, I think we're hoping to have this wrapped up in the next couple of days.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Franti. Any other members?
I have one question.
Ms. Gravellisi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dr. Kelly, prior to this, did we always offer students that lived within 1 mile bus service?
I believe that we did.
Okay. I thought it was always the 2 miles.
Well, prior to this, we never asked who wants bus and who doesn't.
Okay.
Anybody who wanted a bus at the secondary level was provided with the buses. it's a little bit different than at the elementary because they're not going specifically to kids' homes or doing things like that. At the elementary, we typically only provide transportation for students who have that in their IEP, because they go to their neighborhood schools. And even if a parent elects to or asks to have a student placed in a non-neighborhood school, they're responsible for transportation themselves in those cases. So it's only ever really been a question at the secondary level. And typically, anybody who wanted transportation, we provided it.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Sinella.
Through to the superintendent, on one of the plans, you made reference that the possibility we could get by with 2 buses at the cost of $174,000. Would it behoove us to buy a couple of buses or lease a couple of buses and utilize that? I mean, at the cost of $174,000, I don't know what the salaries would be, the leasing of the buses, but that could be an option also.
It could be. I think that by the time we pay salaries and benefits for 2 people, would be getting pretty close to that, fairly close to that number, and then still having to lease buses on top of that. But it's certainly something we can look into.
So you're talking 2 bus drivers at $174,000? No, she said that would be extra. She said that by the time we pay benefits.
No, with all of that in, I think it'd be pretty close to that number.
I misunderstood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sinella. Okay, seeing no more, we'll move on to the revised calendar.
So, I know we talked about this last month, but we found another error on the calendar. We had somehow only had 9 faculty meetings listed on the calendar, and contractually they are to have 10. So we noticed that the month of November did not include the customary early dismissal time, and that's been inserted on November 10th. So we just wanted to call that to everybody's attention, that November 10th will be an early dismissal day for all students, and educators will engage in professional development on that day. So that is going to require a vote of the school committee because it's a change to the calendar.
Just because I don't have it in front of me, what is the last day of school supposed to be?
June 14th.
Any other members have any questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve the updated calendar?
We need a roll call?
Motion by Mrs. Sinella, seconded by Ms. Gravellisi. Roll call.
Mrs. Bronston Rizzo.
Yes?
Mr. D'Ambrosio.
Yes.
Mr. Franzi.
Yes.
Ms. Gravellisi.
Yes.
Mr. Sinella.
Yes.
Ms. Ty.
Yes.
Mayor Arrigo.
Yes.
The next item on the school committee, on the superintendent's report is Revere Public Schools Professional Development Plan. And I am going to ask Dr. Mokaba to share information on this. I believe that you all got a copy of this in your packets. So I'm going to start with the district page, Danielle.
Yep. I'm just pulling out my version so I can see it with my glasses on. So we included, this year we asked with all that we have going on and with our ability to now do a traditional year with half days and professional development happening during director meetings and principal meetings, we wanted to make sure that we had a document that captured all that we are doing, so that we can make sure that we're aligned to our district improvement plan and make sure our schools are aligned with each other, understanding that they have individual needs, but wanting to make sure that our district initiatives are being done in each building. So the first page that you can see here is pretty extensive, and it just talks from the district lens. So the directors, Dr. Garcia, the equity work, the administrators, the professional development that will be provided to all of them. And so you can see, I can just give some examples. So Brianna, Matt, and Christina captured some of the training, the SIPS training, the Center for Collaborative Education training. Our administrators will be recipients of some of that as well. We did this summer run a PLG facilitator training. We trained additional mentors. We're going to continue our work training our administrative team in race and institutional racism, culturally responsive teaching. We're going to look at school and community partnerships and social emotional learning. Some of the other things that are captured here are the Lexia data cycles that Brianna had alluded to. As a result of the mental health audit, one of the pieces that came to our attention was that staff members, educators wanted to be able to access some of the more specialized training that our guidance counselors and our social workers have been privy to over the years. So we plan to extend training in trauma-sensitive schools and open opportunities to all that are interested in taking that. You can see some of the illustrative math trainings that have run and are planning to be run, and with whom. And some of the focus areas for the cabinet and AP meetings coming up, which are 2-hour meetings that we run to support the principals, the directors, and the assistant principals. Does anybody have any questions about that? Go through the whole thing? Okay. The next page is also pretty extensive. So this is the director meetings. Captured here are the 10 hours that we will have in director meetings. This is where educators are able to choose what area they want to focus on. These often align with their professional practice goals as part of their teacher evaluation, and they align with our school and district improvement plan. So some examples here: grading in the competency-based system. You can see the grade level that these courses are designed to help to support, and the specific content areas. In some cases here, you can even see who we have identified or who has volunteered to teach some of these. Areas like unconscious bias in schools, implementing model curriculum units in grades 6 and 7, implementing, as Dr. Porter had said, action civics projects. There are examples for creating mathematics lessons in Desmos, competency-based learning for English learners. And these are led, a lot of these are led by our amazing teacher leaders who are working to support their colleagues. Some of these are provided by outside providers if we are unable to do that or don't have volunteers. Other examples I can give you: effective literacy and effective strategies to support English learners in an equitable and student-centered classroom. So they do align with our themes that we have and our counselors. And then individual schools. In your packet, there's actually no label on the top. So individual schools also identified how they plan to use their time, which is important. It's important for them, again, to align and plan out this professional development. And it's important to teachers to be able to see, how is my time, my professional learning group time, and our staff meeting time going to be allocated. And I think it helps everybody if we're transparent about what our intentions are. So here I'm going to pull up, there's the Wayland School, for example. And again, Andre Pelletier is one of our new principals. He's looking at planning, implementing, and supporting the new literacy and math curriculum and dedicating some time during his principal meetings and during his PLGs. Some of that will be facilitated by their coaches. Most of it will be facilitated by their coaches. He has a focus area of social emotional development in the classroom, revisiting and building school mission and values. As a new principal, I can understand why he would want to do that. There is some mandatory trainings that are included here that are important for you all to see, like MCAS training before we give this test. We do have to make sure that all of our staff are trained in appropriate testing protocols. A little further down, you can see the Hill School. One of their initiatives that they're going to dedicate some PLG time to is what is instructional equity. And again, you'll see some redundancies, planning and implementing and supporting a new curriculum, MCAS training. They have their school-based respect core, PAWS, our new respect core. They're going to dedicate some very specific principal meeting time. And we asked them to fill this out. I will say one of the things that they do is meet with their instructional leadership teams at the beginning of the year. So some of this may be tweaked a little bit and the amount of time may be specified. So they do plan to involve their staff, so they didn't want to be locked into specific dates, but they will meet with their leadership teams when we start school and sort of nail down all of this to be shared with their staff. I can pull up, you can see, again, you can see the consistency if you look at Garfield Elementary and Paul Revere all have the instructional equity, culturally responsive teaching, focus areas on the new literacy and math curriculum. Paul Revere in particular has the Innocent Classroom is what they're going to dedicate some of their early release Wednesdays on, and social emotional learning. And I can,
It's the Lincoln now.
I'm sorry?
That's the Lincoln now. Do you want me to just click through?
Yep, if you want to. So you can, do you have Lincoln up? Yep.
Yep.
So you can see Principal Humis has a very similar plan. She is devoting some PLG time to science and social studies, diving deeper into the new curriculum. They have participated as part of the Deeper Learning and MCIEA initiative. They're part of the Kaleidoscope DESE initiative, which they've presented to you previously. So they're going to continue diving into that work. The Collaborative Classroom is their new literacy curriculum. And again, you can see there they've got MCAS training and things like that. Beachmont, again with a new principal, planning to dive deeply into the new curriculum. He too is going to be working with creating a culturally responsive classroom and community. He is going to be working on PBIS, social emotional support, reimagining the WIN block and tiered support. He plans to dedicate some principal meeting and PLG time to that. Departmentalized courses and course-alike planning across grade levels. Again, that's unique to him, 3 to 5. Susan B. Anthony is next, and I believe they are all pretty aligned in their vision. So they've identified principal meeting time for universal design for learning at Susan B. Anthony, equity and restorative practices, culturally responsive teaching, grading practices. They will be working on and spending time talking about detracking and differentiated instruction, which aligns with some of the things that Dr. Porter had presented earlier. Focusing on formative and summative assessment development. Their second step training for their advisory program will take place during early PLGs in September. They will get SOS training as part of, I can't see that, but SOS training and reflective practices and Project Lead the Way. RMA is going to be spending some time building positive adult relationships through Learn Launch. They will also, and again, you're going to see that redundancy, culturally responsive teaching, second step advisory program, restorative practices and deeper learning, formative assessments, competency-based grading. Oh, the Sandy Hook Promise, I apologize. The SOS training for staff as part of their work with the Sandy Hook Promise, Action Civics, Primary Source Civics PD, Project Lead the Way, and the Equity by Design book study. Garfield Middle School, similar, again, I feel like a broken record. Very similar. Grading practices, restorative practices, culturally responsive teaching, detracking, reflecting, and working on advisory training and the Sandy Hook Promise, Signs of Suicide. Revere High School has planned principal meetings around instructional rounds. They too are part of the Sandy Hook Promise, Signs of Suicide, Competency-Based Learning Vision, and you'll see that their facilitators range from administrators, teachers, and teacher leaders, and the new lead teachers who were granted this year as part of some of the leadership work that we're doing. They plan to spend a significant amount of time working on competency-based learning and how that ties into their vision, their school day, their core competencies, their portrait of a graduate, and their habits of work. They plan to extend and dive deeper into MSTV and introduce new staff to this highly effective instructional practice. And they have included a link that you can peruse at your during your free time with all of their instructional goals. And Seacoast, finally, is going to spend some time on school climate, focusing on school culture development, therapeutic environments, and culturally sensitive spaces. They're going to spend some PD time looking at difficult conversations and the connected student and restorative practices. And then they have their weekly PLGs that are content specific, so humanities, history, math, and science. They plan to extend their equity work and dive deeper into restorative practices during this PLG time, their weekly PLG time.
Thank you, Dr. Mokaba.
Mrs. Rizzo?
Thank you, Dr. Makaba. This was one of the topics that came up under our Policy and Equity Subcommittee on the educational growth and professional development. And although it was very lengthy, it was very informative. So thank you for putting that together for us.
Thank you, Mrs. Rizzo. Any other members? Okay. Move on.
That concludes the superintendent's report.
Great. We'll move on to the consent calendar.
Motion to approve the consent calendar.
Motion to approve. Second. Roll call.
Mrs. Bronston Rizzo?
Yes.
Mr. D'Ambrosio?
Yes.
Mr. Ferranti?
Yes.
Ms. Gravellisi?
Yes.
Mr. Sinella?
Yes.
Ms. Ty?
Yes.
Mayor Arrigo?
Yes. Okay, we'll move on to the report of subcommittees. Mrs. Rizzo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On July 23rd, the Policy and Equity Subcommittee got together for a very informative and some great discussions that came out of it. Some of the highlights were, as Dr. Makaba brought up, the professional development. We talked about using the Washington State model. More importantly, we spoke about the Read Across America Day that we all love to be part of. Some of the suggestions were that it should be neutral and diverse and not specifically Dr. Seuss focused. But the subcommittee stated we also agreed that the 6 books that have been named through the Dr. Seuss should be omitted from our libraries. Also, you know, a lot of our schools might start off with the Dr. Seuss in the front with the Whoville and all the characters and everything. So we're hoping that some of the students can start thinking about maybe some different themes doesn't necessarily have to be Dr. Seuss. There's other great authors. Let's go with that one. And that maybe our student councils that we usually have in 5th grade for elementary, maybe if we give them suggestions with some new themes, they might be able to explore new authors that they never thought of before. So that was a great topic that hopefully we're going to see some different kind of themes. I'm not opposed to Dr. Seuss, but I love seeing our students come up with their own ideas. So looking forward to the spring. We talked about the handbooks, about what the equity board had come up with, and shared that this most likely will take, we were hoping to revise the whole yearbooks out of all the schools, and that would take our council and lots of time, lots of department heads. So maybe starting this year, we can start going through and decipher what is needed, what is not needed, and just update it to 2021. Sorry for the ums. We also talked about the policy Series J, which is about the students, and we suggested that we could probably have our students start coming forward and helping us with those policies and getting some of their ideas included so that maybe we can see it a little bit differently. So, and then we talked about the equity audit and perhaps where we're going with what steps are in place to attract quality and diverse staff. And we talked about the One Goal program. So there was a lot of discussion. I think the only thing that we really asked to is support taking those 6 books from Dr. Seuss out of our district. So at this point, Policy and Diversity is requesting or recommending that this honorable committee vote on that to take it out.
Mrs. Rizzo, so is there a motion to?
Yes, I'll make a motion to exclude the 6 books from Dr. Seuss.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mrs. Rizzo, seconded by Ms. Gravellisi. Roll call?
Mrs. Bronston Rizzo,
Yes?
Mr. D'Ambrosio,
Yes.
Mr. Ferranti,
Yes.
Ms. Gravellisi,
Yes.
Mr. Sinella, Ms. Ty,
Yes.
Mayor Arrigo.
Yes. And did the policy, no, Mrs. Rizzo, go ahead.
So the policy subcommittee got together on August 11th. We went through the policies that we had that were due to the COVID era. Number 1, EBC supplemental policy issues for the pandemic. Originally, we were making the recommendation to rescind that because it basically pertained to last year. And I'm going to double up with the handbook cover page also. With the help of Dr. Gallucci and Dr. Kelly, they were able to help take out what we really don't need at this point, such as when we're talking about remote and hybrid, all that can hopefully go away forever. So at that point, I am going to ask for it's a recommendation to amend EBC supplement and handbook page. So move.
Okay, motion, seconded by Mr. Ferranti. Roll call.
Mrs. Bronston Rizzo,
Yes?
Mr. D'Ambrosio,
Yes.
Mr. Ferranti,
Yes.
Ms. Gravellisi,
Yes.
Mr. Sinella,
Yes.
Ms. Ty,
Yes.
Mayor Arrigo.
Yes. Mrs. Rizzo.
Policy EBCFA, which is face coverings. It's just, this went through the MASC Council and also was approved by MASS. So we're recommending to amend our last year face covering policies to make it more update with what we're dealing with right now. So moved.
Roll call?
Mrs. Bronston Rizzo?
Yes.
Mr. D'Ambrosio?
Yes.
Mr. Ferranti?
Yes.
Ms. Gravellisi?
Yes.
Mr. Sinella?
Yes.
Ms. Ty?
Yes.
Mayor Arrigo?
Yes. Mrs. Rizzo?
So we also reviewed the handbooks, the athletic, Seacoast Elementary, Middle, High School handbooks. And the subcommittee is recommending the handbooks for athletics, elementary, Seacoast, and middle school as edited. Dr. Kelly, you want to bring up the one piece that was changed currently?
Thank you, yes. So one additional change that we're going to make to the elementary and the middle school handbooks will be to include information for caregivers on how they can access free uniforms or uniform pieces if they need that kind of support. That was not included in the original draft that was sent to the school committee last week, but we would like to include that in the final handbook this year.
So we are recommending that as edited. So moved?
Roll call?
Mrs. Bronston Rizzo?
Yes.
Mr. D'Ambrosio?
Yes.
Mr. Ferranti?
Yes.
Ms. Gravellisi?
Yes.
Mr. Sinella?
Yes.
Ms. Ty?
Yes.
Mayor Arrigo?
Yes.
Some of the items that came up in the high school handbook, one was we just inquired about the APEX program. In it, also, there's been additional spaces being given to the students so that they may enjoy their lunchtime. Not last year, nothing happened last year. 2 years ago, we did walk and tour the school, and we noticed some of the students might be sitting in the hallway during their lunch on another floor, and that's because they just wanted quiet time. They, you're supposed to be relaxing, so they're going to be using the library. There's certain spots that Dr. Perella highlighted that they may use. So I think that was a great addition to the students, and I think it will be more welcoming. So we were in favor of that part, and the subcommittee at this time was not in favor of changing the hat policy. So we are recommending that the Revere High School handbook be accepted with the exception of the hat policy. So moved.
Roll call?
Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Discussion.
Dr. Kelly?
I do want to just say, and we did talk about this at the policy subcommittee meeting, that there are a number of students who find our hat policy to be offensive, and a number of staff members, you'll remember that the students did a pilot with your permission 2 years ago now it was, and that when the kids and the staff were surveyed after that pilot, very few indicated that there had been any problem whatsoever with people wearing hats. I did talk to Dr. Perella after the subcommittee meeting last week, and he's actually present on the Zoom here to see if he could weigh in a little bit on this. I think that one of the things that he wanted to talk about, and I'll defer to him in 1 second, is the very good point that the subcommittee made about wearing masks and wearing hats all at once can be a lot. But I think that he's still hoping the committee will be open to hearing the voices of students on this matter. So if I could, can Dr. Perella speak for a couple minutes?
Yeah, in the meantime, I just want to say, I have said many times, I have no problem looking at it at the future and getting more students and current students' voices included in on it. I think it will be valuable to get a lot more information and updated.
And I also mentioned to Dr. Perella that the subcommittee had talked about redoing the handbooks on a larger scale over the course of the school year, and maybe that's somewhere that this could weigh in. So,
Exactly.
Dr. Perella, you want to say a few words?
Thank you, Dr. Kelly, and good evening, school committee members. I'm here tonight appealing to the committee regarding the RHS hat policy. In light of the tremendous challenges of bringing our students back into the building in a flexible and welcoming way this year, I am requesting a one-year extension of the very successful and informative hat policy that was put in place 2 years ago. It was successful in that we had 0 issues or problems in the pilot implementation, informative in that we were able to collect an array of evidence coupled with the contemporary literature available on the topic that demonstrate how the positives of this shift far outweigh any negatives. And I know that there is continued concern regarding this practice, and part of our new district equity plan is to deeply review the policy and systems that are in place in our schools. I'm asking that if we can prolong this for 1 year, and during that time period, it would be a great opportunity for us to deeply examine our hat and dress code policy with your participation in the focus group. Thank you for your time. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any members have any questions or comments?
I would like a clarification, please, for what the subcommittee has recommended, and, that first, and so that we can be clear. I want to be clear on what I'm voting on, because I am in favor of that. I think that this is a time when kids are coming back to school. They've been suffering out of school. The teachers have been suffering. I just think that in the interest of the social emotional health, if a kid feels comfortable wearing a hat, if that'll make him or her feel good, then fine. I don't see anything at all wrong with that. I didn't always feel that way. I have to say, maybe 30 years ago I didn't feel that way. But now that, especially at this time, when I think that kids have gone through so much trauma over the last couple of years, and it's going to be continuing, that's the scary part, that let's not fight about whether somebody has a hat on or not. It just seems to me to be putting kids and teachers in a really difficult position. So whatever the motion is, I support continuing that for a year. And let's just relax and on this issue for a year, and then spend some more time discussing it later on when we have some more information from what actually happened.
Thank you, Ms. Chai. Mrs. Rizzo.
Ms. Tye, like you asked for clarification, when we were reviewing the handbooks, we had already taken that pilot program that had passed. In the current handbook, it was added back in. So yes, we do need to, it was the first time we saw that it was being addressed again. So we do feel that with more student voice and more information on perhaps maybe why, and also at the time that they're going to be wearing masks along with a hat, we just thought it'd be better to, let's start with the students helping us with the policies. And then let's get their voice together, whether it's using their school council. They have 4 different grades that they have their own school councils, and let them maybe do it as a project and get more information.
So, but what is the motion? Is your motion that we continue to allow them to wear hats?
No.
Or is the motion
The
that we do
motion
not?
was to accept the Revere High School handbook without the extra hat policy being put in that we just found out about.
So maybe I can frame this a little bit differently.
Yeah, thank you.
So one of the things, as you know, as overseers of the policy in the school district, the school committee votes on all policies, which includes the handbooks. And every year, the principals sit and go over their existing handbooks and make suggested changes to you for you to vote. And in Dr. Perella's handbook this year, he has suggested that there be a change to the hat policy that allows kids to wear hats, to continue to wear hats the way they were when we were doing the pilot. And Mrs. Rizzo was right, just before COVID hit, this committee had decided to end the pilot at the end of that school year. And then we were at home doing remote learning, so it became a bit of a moot point. But I think Dr. Perella's point now is that enforcing a hat policy or putting him in a position where he's required to enforce a hat policy is going to take a lot of focus off the important work that needs to happen as we re-engage kids in a full-time learning environment, not at a 60% level like we were last year, but at a 100% level, and focuses on something that might be a catalyst for kids feeling unwelcome or feeling like they're not ready for school or can't come to school. I know some of the examples that the kids gave us when they did that research earlier a few years ago was, if I wake up and I feel like my hair looks ugly, I don't want to come to school. If I can put a hat on, I can still come to school. I think we've all been in that situation. I've gotten up and had to run out and do some errands and, you know, thought I looked a bit of a mess and put a hat on and felt like, okay, now I can go to the market. I think we've all in real life been in situations like that. And all we want to do is not have that be a barrier between students being able to attend school or not, or feeling like they can attend school or not. And I think, and Dr. Perella has his hand up. I'll go to you in 1 second, John. It's not that they want to tell kids that you can or you can't. They're going to encourage kids to not, because we want to be able to see who everybody is. But let's not make that be a reason that we're sending kids home from school, I guess. But, sorry, John, go ahead.
No, thank you, Dr. Kelly. One thing I'd like to add to this discussion is that last year, when we did have return of students, students were wearing hats. I think, once again, there was zero issues, problems, any kind of infractions. You know, all reports that I've received from students and for the vast majority of educators is that it is a non-issue. And I'm asking if we could remove that non-issue so that it does not become an issue in a year where we know that we don't know what's going to happen actually. We know that there's going to be challenges in bringing the students back in, and there's a massive transition from what students have lived through, where they love and lived in their bedroom in their pajamas on the computer, and we'd like to sort of ease that transition and get them back in the building while engaging through the equity protocols and planning in a deeper dive into the policies, and I think we can do both.
So, Ms. Gravellisi?
I know, I still have a motion, so
motion's still on
unless
the floor.
someone wants to,
The motion,
On
yeah,
the-
we're still in debate, so the motion's on the floor, it's been seconded, but Ms. Gravellisi, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dr. Perella, you know, the hat policy that we started was very short-lived. We really did not get a chance to revisit it because the pandemic hit. I think it would be a great idea to revisit it with focus groups with the students again, because we didn't have long time with the children. I don't ever remember a student getting sent home for wearing a hat. They've just been asked to remove their hat. And concerns I have, and I've heard from others, is that, you know, for identification purposes, not for behavioral reasons, just for relationship reasons, building relationships with the students, the teachers with the masks and the hats and the hoods really can't identify the child. They don't know if, you know, is it John, is it Sarah? They don't know who it is. So with all of that on, I feel that the teachers, you know, have a difficult time identifying who their students are and building relationships. So that's just my view and opinion on this, and I would like to see further discussion and some more conversation on it.
Thank you, Ms. Gravellisi. So the motion has been made and seconded. We'll take a roll call on that motion. Ms. Tai.
I'd like to make a substitute motion. That we, and if I could just have an observation before that. Dr. Perella, could I ask you a question, if I may, Mr. Mayor? What about hoods? I'm trying to recall. I thought it was quite clear that hoods were not allowed, that hats were.
It was, but they wore them.
That is correct. Hoods or any item that covered a person enough that it would be hard to distinguish who they are were not included in this initial pilot. So basically what we're looking at are hats, certain types of headwear that tend to be worn by females, and do-rags. And this is where it's an equity issue. And I do want to speak to Ms. Gravlisi's point, the relationships built, and I understand the concerns of safety, I do, and other districts are sort of wrestling with this. But I would also suggest that the relationships built by allowing students to be themselves and to kind of work with them as best that we can, meet them where they are. Those are the relationships that last and really develop into lasting and educational opportunities for students. So, so to answer your question, Ms. Tai, no, hoods are not included in this.
Thank you. Then I'll make a substitute motion that we allow, that for 1 year, subject to review in a year, that we define the policy of the hat policy part of the dress code to be that students will be allowed. But I'd like to add, in the interest of social emotional development, that students will be allowed to wear hats during school.
Motion made by Ms. Tai.
The motion is on the acceptance of the handbook minus that piece. So your motion has to be with the handbook and
It would be
your
the handbook
additional.
including
Right.
the hats, right.
Right.
Motion.
Seconded.
Seconded by Mr. D'Ambrosio. We'll take a roll call on the amended motion, which is the handbook, the high school handbook, including hats.
Except maybe the wording could be to accept the handbook as presented by Dr. Perella.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
Is everybody clear?
Yes, this is the subsequent.
Yep. Yep. Roll call.
Mrs. Bronston Rizzo,
No.
Mr. D'Ambrosio,
Yes.
Mr. Ferranti,
No.
Ms. Gravellisi,
No.
Mr. Sinella,
No.
Ms. Tai,
Yes.
Mayor Arrigo.
Yes. The motion does not pass. Ms. Rizzo, you made the original motion, which was seconded. We'll take a roll call on that.
Mrs. Bronston Rizzo,
Yes.
Mr. D'Ambrosio,
Yes.
Yes.
Ms. Gravellisi,
Yes.
Mr. Sinella,
Yes.
Ms. Tai,
No.
Mayor Arrigo.
No. Motion passes.
Thank you for your time this evening. I hope you all have a nice night.
Thank you, Dr. Perella.
Thank you.
Is that it for our subcommittees?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, can I add one thing?
Dr. Kelly?
Dr. Galucci is also here on the Zoom. I thought this would come under COVID policies for the start of the year.
I'm sorry, I thought I added that with the supplemental. I apologize, I
That's
might not
okay.
have.
That's okay. But how are you, Richie?
Doing well. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
I'm just opening your presentation here.
Okay.
All right. And this is the one that Dr. Galucci sent a little bit later in the night, but why is it not letting me? Oh, there we go. Okay. And this is, I should say, well, Dr. Galucci will explain that he did share a lot of this information with the policy subcommittee already, but wanted to reiterate it tonight for the rest of the committee and for the community at large. Go ahead, Dr. Galucci.
Yeah, so thank you everyone for allowing me to present tonight. I have to thank all of the members of the Revere Board of Health, particularly Lauren Buck and Dr. Kong, for their continued support in helping to develop these policies. And not only that, but really providing us with guidance that has allowed us to be ready for this school year as this kind of second wave hits. We made a lot of decisions when we were in a very good place in the late spring, early summer, where we may not have actually needed our health aides or anticipated that they would be coming back in the fall, but we decided to bring them back. We've set a lot of these wheels in motion so we were ready to reopen schools in the fall for all of our children and our staff in a safe manner. So I thank Lauren and Dr. Kong for all of their help with this in getting us ready for this school year. All right, kind of our big kind of top policies or guidelines is that we're going to open school with all staff, students, and visitors being required to wear a mask, an approved mask, while indoors and on school buses. That's already been communicated to the community at large as an anticipated policy. Social distancing, while it is not required, it is encouraged whenever possible. And as I said at the policy meeting, all of our administrators are really taking social distancing serious, even though it is not technically by the letter of the law required. They are never sacrificing space, whether it's in the classroom, in the lunchroom, having kids go outside to eat for lunch. They're really trying to social distance whenever we can, including the arrangement of desks and children and staff within the classroom. We're going to continue our pool testing program, now called Routine COVID-19 Safety Check each Monday of the school year. This is going to allow us to identify any potential asymptomatic individuals that may be positive. And just as we did last year, once we're able to identify that student or staff member, communicate with them or their family to make sure they have the appropriate information and proper guidance in regards to quarantining and taking care of themselves during what's going to be a difficult time. During instances where we do have a positive case, the nurses are going to continue their contact tracing program in our school community. They will, of course, identify anyone that is determined to be a close contact. One wrinkle that we are implementing or intend to implement this year is a test to stay model. And this will be only used for instances where someone is determined to be a close contact based on a school program. So this would not be applicable to someone who has a household member who is currently positive for COVID-19, but rather someone who is within close proximity of a student in their class. That student will not be forced to quarantine. Instead, they will take a morning test each morning for the next 7 school days, or 7 days rather, with our school nurse to ensure that they test negative before entering the school program. We think this is going to be an important piece of our program this year because it's going to allow, obviously, students to stay in school, but it also highlights the importance for families. They're going to be receiving a consent form for our routine safety check testing program. Only those students who consent can be tested. So by consenting to testing, we're really trying to keep kids in school on a more frequent basis, and that will allow us to do so if families do indeed provide consent to participate in the testing program. As I said earlier, administrators and ultimately teachers will be organizing classroom space to optimize spacing between students. We're going to start out with desks and rows spaced as much as possible. Instances where we're going to have tables, we're going to try to space the children within the table to make sure that they're not facing each other. Facing each other is going to be kind of a last resort model, but most of our approach is going to be to space kids and staff as much as humanly possible. All right, lunch and recess. So this can be an unsettling time because obviously this is going to be time where masks are going to come down for a brief period. The first bullet point is a quote from Dr. Kong where she says, We should be eating outdoors. There's no better ventilation system than Mother Nature. So we are certainly encouraging lunch outdoors when the weather is suitable. So administrators have already started to work with Cheryl Cole and our dining services team to map out how that's going to work, what's going to be the point of service, and how the kids are going to take their lunch outside so that they can space appropriately and eat lunch. A lot of the subsequent bullets are going to be policies and kind of routines that administrators and lunch monitors are going to stress while in the lunchroom. Certainly, these are going to be communicated during the early presentations of the school year, ensuring that students have masks on when they're not eating or drinking. So obviously, we're going to have students come up to the lunch line. When those students are in line, they will have their mask on the entire time until they get back to their seat and they're actually starting to consume food or drink. Once they finish, mask goes back on, they dispose of their trash, and they can sit and socialize with peers where everybody is masked once lunch is finished. We're going to have assigned seats in the cafeteria, even if that means allowing our students to kind of pick their seats in the early days of the school year, and then just have seating maps based on where the students chose to sit. We can certainly revisit those seats at some point as we change trimesters or semesters if the students wanted to change their seat, or if circumstances change and we decide that assigned seats are no longer necessary. And just like a classroom, any way we can space the tables apart in the cafeteria or minimize, have half the students outside, half that choose to eat inside, and that allows us to space the students more. We're going to take advantage of those situations and opportunities. For our common areas, we're going to open the year without lockers, which when I think to my schooling and all the textbooks that I used to haul around, that can be a little unsettling. But the fact of the matter is the schools reported having great success last year when the kids did not use lockers. Their Chromebook is their kind of primary textbook. I know Dr. Porter earlier when she was presenting had said that they use a lot of text that's digital, that can be found online or given to the students via email. So certainly as the weather becomes colder and students start to bring heavy coats and circumstances change one way or another with COVID-19, this is a decision that we'll revisit in the fall, but to open the year, we're not gonna open the lockers back up. It serves as a real point of congregation and just something that, at least to start the school year, we think is prudent to avoid. Water bubblers, urinals, and bathroom stalls. Also, we're going to continue to tape off every other stall and bubbler as we did last school year. Again, this is going to the continuation of this is going to be based on early observation and feedback. If we find that blocking off those stalls or urinals is creating unnecessary congregation or bottlenecks, that's something that individual administrations are going to address and communicate with me and subsequently the Board of Health to kind of revisit that policy as we go. In terms of students visiting restrooms and perhaps coming into contact with other staff members or students, logs. We're going to use bathroom logs within the classroom, bathroom monitors outside of the restrooms themselves when they're available, just to be sure that we have eyes and logs on who left the classroom, when they left the classroom, and whether or not they may have come into contact with someone. Student entrance and exits and subsequently transitions while students are in school. So we're going to continue with multiple arrival and dismissal points. This is something that went very smoothly in the spring when we returned to school. Administrators are going to kind of do what's best for their building. So we talked about a couple of options, whether it's a grade level entrance where I'll use the middle school as an example. Grade 6 students enter at one door, grade 7 at another door, and grade 8 at a third door. Or if we use the first class, last class approach, where students enter the entrance that's closest to their first class. So these 5 classrooms would use the south entrance, these 8 classrooms would use the north entrance, and same approach at the end of the day when students are exiting. They use the closest exit to their last period class. So administrators are deciding based on kind of the makeup of their building and the schedule of their students, which of these approaches would be best, but we are going to use multiple. That's going to be the common thread between all the schools. We are going to transition students from class to class. One of the kind of key points with Dr. Kong and Lauren was that transition time is less than 3 minutes from class to class. Again, we're going to cover, encourage routines like walking directly to class without pausing, stopping, or congregating. In moments where we can, we're going to stagger transition to departmentalized classes. I'm thinking of the upper elementary level where they may have one class in math, another class in ELA, and those classes are going to swap. We can kind of stagger that entrance and exit to make sure one class exits, kind of goes down the hall while the other class goes across the hall, and then they enter into the empty classroom. So those kind of moments where we can sacrifice a few minutes to stagger, we're going to do so. And some other details. Anybody that's visiting the school, we're going to ask to make an appointment. Obviously, this is not applicable to emergencies or unforeseen circumstances. It just really gives building staff the opportunity to make sure that they have all of their I's dotted and all of their T's crossed when someone is visiting the building. We also have communication with the parent that, or caregiver that's making the appointment to remind them they have to wear a mask. We'll of course have spare masks on hand for anybody that forgets. But that predictability is very helpful to building staff to ensure safety. For our in-person meetings this year, our staff meetings can take place indoors. All staff will be masked. We're going to prohibit food to start the year during staff meetings just to have less up and down with the mask during those meetings. And of course, we'll space, just as I said, for students. Small meetings with families can take place indoors, in person, while everyone is, of course, masked. And large gatherings, and this is probably further down the line, thinking about field day or things like that, where we have whole grade levels or even whole schools, those must be held outdoors, regardless if they have food or not. We're not going to have massive gatherings inside the building, really under any circumstances, at least at this moment, to start the school year. We are going to start to consider some walking field trips and those that have a very short distance, perhaps. Right now, that's defined as under an hour. But during our policy meeting, we did discuss that during the months of September, October, even into November, we're not going to rush out to start booking field trips. It's really not the time, but it is kind of inching back closer to a sense of a normal school program that we'd see in a typical year. And we're going to, of course, continue our work with the Revere Board of Health to host local vaccination clinics for students that are 12 years or older. We already had communication with Lauren Buck today, and we are in the initial stages of setting up a September, late August vaccination clinic that will communicate out to the community once those details are finalized. I am happy to report that as of a week ago, so these numbers might be even better, Revere children ages 12 to 15, 64% have received at least one dose of the vaccination, and 52%, just over half, are fully vaccinated. In Revere residents 16 to 19 years old, 73% have received one dose, and 62% are fully vaccinated. Those statistics are important. In all my conversations with the Revere Board of Health, that is a layer of protection without lifting a single finger. The moment we walk in, our older students, 12 to 19, walk into our buildings, over half are fully vaccinated.
Richie, I can quickly update these two numbers. I did ask
Okay.
Lauren for an update today, and I should have incorporated it here, but I'll give you those two. So 69% of the younger kids have at least one dose, and 73%, or 76% of the older kids have at least one dose. These numbers are altered too, but I won't bother with those now.
All right, some other details when we were revisiting policy. We're not going to host classroom visits, and again, this is a policy that we will revisit as circumstances continue to develop. This is just to open the school year. We are not going to have COVID rooms per se, where last year we had a whole gigantic space dedicated to an isolation room. but we certainly will have an isolation space developed for any student or staff who exhibits COVID-19 symptoms, where the nurse can isolate that person until we get them the proper care. Families will continue to be provided with a daily screening tool that asks them to, if their child has any symptoms that may be COVID related, to determine whether or not their child should stay home from school on a specific day. In terms of sports and athletic eligibility, we're going to continue to be guided by DESE and the guidelines that are being put forth with the MIAA. And clubs and activities, we may suspend or move them to a virtual format to ensure adherence to safety guidelines. But right now, we may host these in person, just where we're an in-person school model. Those extracurricular clubs and activities after school will be bound by the same guidelines that we use during the school day. All right, our family nights. I only listed the very first family nights for each of the two that are listed here. So our Meet the Teacher night is September 14th, and we're gonna hold that remotely. Same for our first parent-teacher conference, which is November 17th for the middle schools, 18th for the high schools, and December 14th for elementary schools. Again, this is policy that we're gonna revisit, but at least to open the school year, we had great success with the remote format to these evenings last year, and something we're going to continue at least to start the school year for this year, and then revisit down the line.
Thank you, Dr. Calucci.
Do any members have any questions or comments? Mrs. Rizzo and then Mr. Sinella.
First of all, again, Dr. Calucci, I apologize for leaving that major piece out.
No worries.
I will say the MIA board is meeting tomorrow on this, so I'm sure Mr. Shea will get some information by tomorrow about 3 o'clock. So I look forward.
Thank you. Mr. Sinella.
Yes, thank you. Dr. Galucci, are water stations going to be open?
They are on an individual basis. This was a specific question that I asked the Revere Board of Health. So in particular, Mr. Sinella, certainly the water filling stations will be open,
That's right.
but also the bubblers will be as well. What won't be open, if it's that dual bubbler where there's two potential drinking fountains, one of them will be closed off. So will only be an individual drinking station.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other members?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Mr.
Point of
Sinella.
information, with the concerns we're having of making sure everything is following through, I noticed that different communities are requiring school personnel to be vaccinated. Would that be prudent for us at this time to make a motion that all Revere school personnel will be vaccinated by a certain date? Or, as Boston has said, be subject to screening, weekly screening? So
Yes.
I need some advice on.
Sure, Ms. Sinella, I can take that. We've been working with the Board of Health and Dr. Kong to figure out a way to have a citywide, including schools, citywide kind of policy around vaccinations. I think the general consensus has been, and I know Boston did announce something pretty recently where they're requiring folks to either show proof of vaccination or be tested. And that comes at a great cost to provide testing for every employee. And so what we're kind of relying on is, or the thinking is that the FDA will approve, make that mandatory. There still is going to be some level of collective bargaining that needs to happen. And we've started those conversations with the city unions, at least, in saying this is something that's coming down. We're going to have a conversation about it, and folks are ready to have that conversation at some point. I'm not of the mindset to financially incentivize people for the vaccine, but I think that there's definitely some things that we're going to have to figure out in terms of different situations and how employment's impacted. So I guess all that to say, we're prepping to have something to kind of roll out. But again, at least I've been talking to my colleagues who have all taken pretty much taken the path of saying, let's wait for the FDA approval, and then, you know, we'll have a little bit more leverage over what we can do and how we move. And we don't, and I think everyone in my position across the Commonwealth isn't necessarily excited about the idea of financially incentivizing people to be vaccinated, because we know it's the best way to fight what we're all going through. But we want to be able to make sure that people are vaccinated and
All right,
require
so
that.
then we'll leave it up a little premature on that
I think it's a little
part, but-
premature. I'd like, you know, if we can revisit it potentially in our September meeting, I think that may be a better time.
So, thank you for the update.
Yeah, thank you. Mrs. Rizzo.
What's helpful too is a couple of hours ago, the MTA voted 46 to, I want to say 4 in favor of vaccinations. So, you know, there's a start. But many of us are on the same page.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Galucci. Enjoy the rest of your night.
Thank you, everyone. Nice to see you.
So at this time, I'll make a motion to accept the COVID policies for the 21-22 school year.
Motion has been made and seconded. We'll have a roll call.
Mrs. Bronston Rizzo?
Yes?
Mr. D'Ambrosio?
Yes.
Mr. Ferranti?
Yes.
Ms. Gravellisi?
Yes.
Mr. Sinella?
Yes.
Ms. Ty?
Yes.
Mayor Rigo?
Yes. Okay. We'll move on. There's no old business. Any new business? Oh, there is old business. My apologies.
No, I don't think it
Mrs.
got,
Rizzo.
the old business was last month's new business of, and I want to say Robin had said it's in by accident, she put it in the committee of the whole package, and it was regarding the resignations of educators and updates of why they are leaving.
Did you want me to summarize that?
I'm sure you could more eloquently than myself.
So I did, the committee did receive a document that summarizes this information. There have been over the summer 34 teacher resignations, and we did focus on teachers. I took that to be what you really were interested in, correct? And we broke them down by each of the different schools. And then through either their resignation letters or the exit surveys that they did, and in some cases it was an exit interview with the principal, identified their reasons for leaving. The vast majority of them, it was either a commute issue or a career advancement piece. There were a couple, there were actually 3 that I had highlighted if you look at the online version in green, who identified, and each one of them was from a different school, so I don't see a trend in this data. But there were 3 people who identified concerns with the school culture or the district culture as a problem for them, and part of their reasoning for leaving, which is not hugely surprising. I think that in any field, in any area, there are people who just feel like it's not a right fit, and elect to move on for that reason.
Any members have any questions or comments? Mrs. Rizzo?
No, and just realizing some people just had a tough time last year. They can't do it, and they're taking a break, or maybe even a leave of absence. But it is disheartening. I mean, we've talked about one of our teachers wanting to try something different after 25 years, and we just hope he sees the light and gets right back to us. But we have great educators. We hate to lose them, but everyone has their reasons, and hopefully, we're at a time that we can start retaining our great teachers and also bring in teachers, diverse teachers also, and retain them all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rizzo. Seeing no further old business, we'll move on to new business. Ready? Mr. Sinella.
I don't know if this come under new business, but where do we stand on the high school, on Diane, I mean, is it site, trying to find a site now, or where are we at?
We are, and there is actually, I'm sure you all got the notification of the community meeting that's going to be on Thursday. Thank you for mentioning that, because you remind me to tell everybody about it. There is going to be a community meeting with an update from both our owner's project manager and the designer, and that's this Thursday at 5:30, sorry, at 6 o'clock. And that'll be via Zoom, so anybody can join into the meeting. We are holding the Zoom presence itself for our family members and community members who need Spanish or Arabic translation, and inviting everybody else to join in on Zoom, so that they can watch from there. YouTube, thank you, YouTube.
Can we get the link? We have the link sent to us?
Yes, so we can resend it, yep.
Okay.
Through you to the superintendent, when the 4 sites were mentioned, I don't remember if the old Revere Drive-In or the theater was. My understanding is that the deal has fallen through and that the land is available. Brian, could you?
That's not true.
Okay,
So,
no, that's why I'm asking, because.
No, and I had heard some rumors about this. So Amazon purchased the site at Showcase Cinema. That was a recent purchase. They were actually planning to lease the space, and they turned around and bought the property, and they have been in touch with our building department. They plan on building a $68 million facility there. So that's moving forward. That nothing has changed on that.
Thank you.
I can add that, and Brian or Susan or Stacy, who are all on the building committee, feel free to weigh in here, but the primary areas that we're looking at right now are the existing site, the Wonderland site, and the Revere Housing Authority site. So that's kind of where we're narrowed down to.
And also the Arapahoe Park.
Yeah, well, I consider that the existing site, right?
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any members have items from school committee interests? Ms. Ty.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to throw you and the people you work with and the many staff members around and who have been working hard, especially with the Board of Health. I'd like to throw you a couple of bouquets here. Because in the absence of leadership at the state level about masking and so many other things, you have been the real leader here. We've decided that, I look, and I'm sure Stacy knows this so much from the MASC things, how much consternation there is among other school committees because they don't know about the masks and whether they'll have a mask mandate, and they're afraid, and teachers have almost universally endorsed the mask policy, and so thanks for your leadership, and thanks especially to the Board of Health that you have worked with so closely and listened to real people and really responsible people. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ty. Although I'd like to take all of the accolades, the people that work for the city are the ones that deserve all the praise. I'm lucky to be able to work with some really great people every day. but the people of this city have stepped up, and not only people that work for the city, but volunteers, residents, business owners, stakeholders, and all different facets have stepped up. And we're very lucky to have a lot of really amazing people work for the city, and it's a pleasure to be the part of a leadership team in the city, and to be part of a tremendous team. So it's all about the team, and I appreciate that. I did a side note. I did read an article today, actually, about a school committee that did not take the recommendation of a Board of Health. The Board of Health, yeah, I wasn't going to name the town, but
I'm calling them out. I already did on Twitter.
There was a town that did not accept the Board of Health's recommendation for a mask mandate. Their school committee did not accept the Board of Health's recommendation. And the best quote that was in the article that I read was that I think it was the chair of the Board of Health said, "I am a member of the Board of Health, not the Board of Popularity." And it was pretty important statement, because a lot of what we do as leaders in the community is not always the most popular thing, but we have to kind of look at our moral compass and try to make the best decisions that we can based on the perspectives that we have. So, and that's what we do. And again, I can't thank the people that are around me every day, making the city a better place. So, thank you.
It would just, may I make the final comment? It would just be easier if the leadership came from the state and no school committee had to be put in that position.
Well, just in defense to that also, not everyone is maybe Revere in some of them, but if each district actually looked at the science and the data and listened to those people that are the experts, they should be able to make their own recommendations and do the right thing. So I think to have one blanket statement is kind of difficult when it in my opinion. I'm just glad I'm in an area that people listen to the science and data.
Amen to that. And
Okay.
have the courage to do so.
Absolutely.
We will move to motions. Mr. D'Ambrosio.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have a whole slate tonight. I'll start with one that is not on the agenda but came from the committee of the whole. It is a motion to approve the student activity accounts as proposed by Mr. Cruz. So moved.
Second?
Roll call?
Mrs. Bronston Rizzo?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Ferrand?
Yes.
Ms. Gravellisi?
Yes.
Mr. Sinella?
Yes.
Ms. Ty?
Yes.
Mayor Arrigo?
Yes.
Awesome, thank you. And now we'll move on to the regular agenda motions, and we'll start with A. And it is a motion to encumber $21,000 for invoice number 8 to Left Field LLC for owner project management services for the period dated June 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2021. So moved.
Roll call?
Mrs. Bronston Rizzo?
Yes.
Mr. D'Ambrosio?
Yes.
Mr. Ferranti?
Yes.
Gravellisi?
Yes.
Mr. Sinella?
Yes.
Ms. Ty?
Yes.
Mayor Arrigo?
Yes.
Thank you. On to B, a motion to approve payment of invoice number 8 to Left Field LLC for owner project management services for the period dated June 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2021. So moved.
Second?
Roll call?
Mrs. Bronston Rizzo?
Yes.
Mr. D'Ambrosio?
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Ms. Gravellisi?
Yes.
Mr. Sinella?
Yes.
Ms. Ty?
Yes.
Mayor Arrigo?
Yes.
Thank you. On to C, a motion to encumber $98,420 for invoice number 87970.00.0-5 4 to Perkins Eastman for feasibility study and schematic design for the period dated June 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2021. So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Mrs. Bronston Rizzo?
Yes.
Mr. D'Ambrosio?
Yes.
Mr. Ferranti?
Yes.
Ms. Gravellisi?
Yes.
Mr. Sinell?
Yes.
Ms. Ty? Mayor Arrigo?
Yes.
Great, thank you. On to D, approve payment of invoice number 879870.00.0-4 to Perkins Eastman for feasibility study and schematic design for the period dated June 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2021.
So moved.
So moved.
Roll call.
Mrs. Bronston Rizzo?
Yes.
Mr. D'Ambrosio?
Yes.
Mr. Ferranti?
Yes.
Ms. Gravellisi?
Yes.
Mr. Sinella?
Yes.
Ms. Ty? Mayor Arrigo?
Yes.
Thank you all. Moving on to E, a motion to encumber $14,000 for invoice number 2112-00 to Perkins Eastman for geotechnical consulting services feasibility study, May 30, 2021. So moved.
Roll call.
Mrs. Bronston Rizzo?
Yes.
Mr. D'Ambrosio?
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Ms. Gravellisi?
Yes.
Mr. Sinella?
Yes.
Ms. Ty? Mayor Arrigo?
Yes.
Fantastic. On to F, I believe. A motion to approve payment of invoice number 2112-00 to Perkins Eastman for geotechnical consulting services feasibility study through May 30th, 2021.
Second.
Roll call.
Mrs. Bronston
Yes.
Rizzo? Mr. D'Ambrosio?
Yes.
Ferranti?
Yes.
Ms. Gravellisi?
Yes.
Mr. Sinella?
Yes.
Ms. Ty? Mayor Arrigo?
Yes.
Great. To G, a motion to approve $1,800 for invoice number 1 to Peter W. Sleeper Associates for retainer feasibility services. So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So moved.
Great. And to the final one, H, approve payment, a motion to approve payment of invoice number 1 to Peter W. Sleeper Associates for retainer feasibility services. So moved.
All in favor?
Mr. Chairman, just a quick explanation about this relocation feasibility services. I'm not really sure what that's for.
Okay.
Dr. Kelly, I just have a question about the amount for Peter Sleeper retainer feasibility services. I just want an explanation for that, please.
$2,700?
Well, one's for 18 and one's for 27. I just want to know what, what's the feasibility services for?
So this was part of the, so the first one is, they're the ones who are doing feasibility studies for the new high school on relocation. So the first one was $1,800, the second one was $2,700, and I believe that the detail is attached in your packet. Let me just see.
Are they doing multiple sites?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
And I believe that the specifics were around the draft relocation plans for different sites.
Yeah.
So as they gone through the process of thinking through the different sites, they had to kind of tweak what they're doing.
And so, Mr. Franti, one of the things that'll be shown in the meeting on Thursday are really rough draft renderings of what a new high school building might look like, either on this current location or on the Wonderland location or on the Housing Authority location. And so that's what these groups were working on over the last 6 weeks or so. And that information will be shared at the community meeting. But it's very rough sketches of what the building might look like, but it gives an accurate outline of the footprint of the building and the plot of land that's permissible to be used if we were to access any of those areas and all that kind of thing. So it's still some pretty detailed work.
Dr. Kelly, we down to 3 locations over there at 4th one.
We're down to those 3 locations.
The high school, Wonderland, and the housing. Is there a 4th one?
No, we're down to those 3 locations with multiple different options on each.
Dr. Kelly, although I knew about Thursday, I don't think we didn't get anything about Thursday. No.
I'll talk to Dr. Gulucci about that. We just sent it out, I believe, today. Did we send it today? No, we sent it last week. I knew we did. Do you guys get the letters that, like, when I send a letter home to the families, do you guys get that?
Once in a while, Dr. Galucci might send us one, but far and far in between, like, a letter just came out, we weren't told.
But you don't get when we send those letters, right? Because that's in Power School, I think that's, all right, that's.
The last one we got from Dr. Galucci was last Wednesday about the school bus, about the bus survey. I don't see anything else that he sent us.
So,
Okay.
motion to
So-
adjourn?
No, we didn't finish. So we were on, I believe,
One for
H,
2,700.
We were on H.
right? So
One for 2,700.
the motion to approve payment for invoice number 1, and
No, we're still on.
we're on H. So we had, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Move on to Mr. D'Ambrosio.
It's just, it's,
You don't have I?
Okay. We've got 2 more.
Thank you so much. A motion to encumber $2,700 for invoice number 2 to Peter W. Sleeper Associates for retainer feasibility studies. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Ayes have it. Mr. D'Ambrosio?
Fantastic. And a motion to approve payment of invoice number 2 to Peter W. Sleeper Associates for retainer feasibility services. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Brian,
That's
before we
approved.
go on, let me ask Diane a question. To encumber something means, there's not an account for all of these? Encumbering usually puts money aside for that specific purpose.
Right.
Isn't there all these under one umbrella? I mean, we should be just voting for payment. Why are we encumbering it?
So there is a fairly substantial account at the city for all of this work. It's one large account. Is it 2.4 million, Brian, I want to say?
I believe it's either 2.5 or it might be $2.4 million. Yeah.
But the requirement is that in order to spend any of that money, you have to first allocate the money, so encumber it, and then you have to say, let's pay that bill.
All right, okay, thank you.
And I believe that's there are MSBA requirements
Rules,
around
yeah.
how we.
I think that was explained before, but I just wanted to clarify. Thank you. Good, thank you.
Okay. Motion to adjourn.
second.